Yo, what's up, everybody? Kickstarting this podcast off with two Friedrich Nietzsche quotes. Number one is, endure love with oneself. This is art, the finest, subtlest, ultimate, and most patient of all. So this is just clarifying on how hard and important and subtle is a really good word, fine and all the finer details to endure love with oneself. And using that word, endure, because you go through periods of your life where you love and don't love yourself. The second quote is, man is difficult to discover, most of all to himself. The spirit often tells lies about the soul. Ooh! I'll say that again. Man is difficult to discover, most of all to himself. Difficult to discover yourself. Because your spirit often tells lies about the soul. So that could be your conscious or unconscious telling lies about your unconscious or unconscious or self-beliefs of yourself. What? Bit of a paradox about there, but oh man, I find that important. So today's podcast is essentially how to crush your damn best self, baby. What does that look like, and how do you go after and get it? So I'm just gonna give a little note here. So at the moment, currently got Mondays off. You can celebrate that with me. I've gone part-time at work so I can focus more on my coaching. I'm building all these different tools and using all these different things and learning all this different stuff and really starting to flex my skills with clients and people to really help them get to being their best self. And if you're interested, please shout me a DM or please shout out and give me an email, and I'll help walk you through essentially what we do. But the main thing is this is actually a really important podcast for this, because we map out what your best self looks like and then hold you accountable to that, basically. Then we show you all the different little hacks and techniques and things we can use. We've got a whole bunch of different resources for you to go crush it. So without further ado, I'd also let you know that if you would like some bone broth, which optimizes your brain as best as possible, which optimizes your gut, and if you know about leaky gut syndrome and you want to feel as best as possible, bone broth, the guys from Best of the Bone, have some of the best bone broth possible. So their bone broth that they have out is organic, free-range, grass-fed cows cooked over a 72-hour process. So with that slow cooking process of the bones, essentially, it removes all of the bad stuff and just keeps all of the good stuff in there and all that real high nutrient quality. A lot of other companies either high pressure, rise, or use high temperatures, which get rid of all the good stuff. Super high in omega-3s and real good for you. Best of the Bone, you can go to herbaldoctors.com. I think it's theherbaldoctors.com. And you can use the code Corey12 to get a 12% discount. Or you can click the link in my bio, my Instagram, or go to my website, CoreyBoutwell.com. You just scroll down a little bit and you can find a link that has an automatic discount link. You just go straight on there and you can get yourself some bone broth, nice and cheap. I literally go through like a jar a week. I love it so much. Makes me feel great. Gets my brain guts optimized. So, without further ado, best self tips. I have got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little tips I like to go through in order to educate you on how to be your damn best self. Now, one of the first tips that we can say for this is essentially why. Find out why you want to be your best self and what does that actually look like. Find out your own why, your vision, and your mission, and ask yourself the question, okay, so I would like to be my best self. Why would being my best self be important to me? And then you answer that question. Well, because I do this, this, and this. Then you ask yourself that question again. Why would this be important to me? And then you ask that question again. Why would that be important to me? And why would that be important to me? And essentially, you just keep on stacking reasons on top of reasons as to why it would be so important to you. And that gets you really clear on what you need to do. And what you want to notice as well, you're asking yourself the questions for that, the answers for that question, is essentially, when does it switch over when you think like, okay, so being my best self for me is going to be good for me. 2, why is being my best self important to me? Because it's good for them, others, the rest of the world, impact, family, friends, someone else, future children, whatever it may be. When it gets beyond yourself like that, that's when you found the key. That's when you found the secret sauce, right? So what does it actually look like? And mapping that out. So I'd like to do like an exercise, like, what does the best version of you look like in 5 months? And also, what does the best version of you look like in 5 years? And then start thinking about these things. So what decisions does that person make? How do they dress? What's their mindset like? What time do they get to bed? What food are they actually eating? What is in their current routine? What do they really like doing? What sort of time freedom do they have? What sort of financial freedom do they have? What would they do when they get down about something? What would that person do when they experience resistance, resilience, when they experience self-doubt, unworthiness, anxiety, or depression? What would the best version of you do when experiencing those feelings or situations? Right? You can think about that for a while and you sort of come to the realization, oh, this best person of me would be doing this, and this. And I think this is really, really important to actually think about and to do, because, and having like, while you're doing this as well, being extremely open-minded to shoot for the damn stars, right? Like when I say the best version of you, I mean like the most ultimate, supercharged, best elite version of yourself. What does that person look like? What are they doing? What is their why, right? Shoot for the stars, because you'd rather shoot for the stars and not aim at all, right? At least we can get to the moon, or we'll get to the damn stars, right? So be really open-minded with what that person does and what they look like, physically, mentally, how they experience different stuff. Now, what you start to realize is you'll get actually, when you start getting down to it, you're like, well, to do that and be that person, what I need to do is show up consistently every single day to the world. But showing up every day and like showing the fuck up every single day consistently to the world of being that version of yourself. That's the key. Oh, well, how do I show up? Well, it all just comes down like fundamentally to the fundamentals, right? You're eating really healthy food. You're getting really good sleep. You have really good relationships. You can deal with stress really well. You make sure that you're hydrated. You make sure that your physical and mental body is basically all sorted out. You do all the things that you need to do to get done during the day being a mature adult. What are these things? And you're taking responsibility for them. Very quite simple. Because once you're actually doing that, and you have that, and you start gaining self-confidence, you start gaining self-respect, you start taking responsibility, is that it really starts to allow yourself to get into states where you can get really creative and start creating beyond yourself and start figuring out all of those different things. All of this, or start using and flexing and creating new things and understanding new things and applying and using new things and constantly being innovative and not, being connected to, not being connected to the anticipation of things. You're just doing things and it's filling your cup up and you're doing those things that you choose to do, right? But that comes as a side effect from having all of these things sorted out on a routine basis without all the stress coming in. A good example for me doing this is every time that I commit to something where I am either getting lean or I'm putting my health first for a while, something like that. A really good example is I start feeling fantastic because everything's routine and habitualized, just all the basics and the fundamentals. And what happens a lot of the time is at the end of the day, I have like an hour to myself where it's just me. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I start creating tools, organizing my mind, writing out notes, and they're so beneficial. And I can't just it's literally like I'm inventing new things within my mind and putting it on paper. And I'm like, this is just, so important. If you watch one of my latest IGTVs, it's just there's some of the tools that I use and created within just a week of having a little bit of spare time. And I'm like, this is so critically important. All of these different things. But what you notice with this first point is that when you map out this best person and what does it look like, you're doing all these little things in your routine, in your schedule, because you want to show up every single day consistently, because what happens is consistently things start to get better and better, weekly, monthly, bing, bing, bing. Things spiral upwards. You build up a massive resource of forward momentum. And if you haven't listened to my podcast on self-confidence, Confidence Decoder, to listen to that talks about getting into forward momentum. And forward momentum is the damn key, right? That is definitely key to being your best self. But you build that up by doing all these little things. But what you realize when you start trying to do all these little things, That is fucking hard. And it's exponentially hard. It's so hard. You don't realize like, oh my God, I got to do these little things. But why is it hard and you experience friction to all of these different things? Is because you haven't just got the thought patterns to understand them yet. So just for an example, getting to bed early every single night, sticking to a consistent meal plan and getting to the gym 5 days a week. When you haven't got that on autopilot or it's not a habit, it's a massive effort. And it doesn't take 21 days. The science says that it's actually like around 40 plus days in order for your mind, right? So it takes a little while. So the first 10 days are essentially like impossible. You're going to be stuffing up every single time. The next 10 days is essentially, you're starting to get a little bit of a hang of it. The last 10 days, it's starting to be like, oh, I'm actually starting to get this now. But then it's the 10 days after that where you start to master it. It becomes an autopilot, right? But you're trying to do that when you map the best version of yourself out with a whole bunch of different things. And it's quite overwhelming. And it's easy to get down on yourself for that, all right? It's easy to get down on yourself. But if you get really clear on why, hopefully you're motivated enough to keep getting out there and crushing it. So that is all point number one. Point number two is creating your unconscious and making becoming aware of what your unconscious is, right? Your unconscious thoughts, minds, what's happening unconscious, whatever's happening in your dreams and stuff. Bringing all of that unconscious stuff to the conscious. So making it conscious, being aware of it, like, oh, man, I have not meditated like any day for the past month or whatever it is. If unconsciously, if you just dropped off and you stopped doing that and then you forgot about it, right? It's completely unconscious. But then thinking, why can't I focus? Why don't I have the energy to single in and do this? Right? Oh shit, it was meditation. You've just brought that conscious again, right? And then put it into a routine where you're practicing meditating every single day so that it's unconscious again. So you've got the loop of unconscious, conscious, and unconscious again. So that's the process and the sequence to do everything, right? Understanding what food that you need for yourself consciously. You don't know unless you go get a DNA test done, a blood test done. You map out what's happening, internally, what certain foods make you feel. Does gluten make you feel shit? Does dairy make you feel shit? Does eating high fats make you feel good? Does having carbs in the middle of the day make you feel good? Is having 2 coffees a day make you drained? Does having 1 coffee a day make you feel fantastic? So understanding all of those things, this is a different example. Unconsciously, what are you doing? And then are you actually making the decisions and conscious decisions to do all of those things that are going to serve you. And then once you figure those out, keep them in a routine and get them into a good habit again so that they become unconscious again, so that you're just doing them so that you can show up every single day consistently to your best self and doing all the decisions that your best self's doing, right? Ooh. The third point is, why do you experience resistance? So I think this is extremely important. So if you look at your best self, if you start from like, okay, you now, and you put a little journey line to like who your best self is, a lot of the time you'll come off the path, right? And that your job is to, every time you come off the path, or even get a coach's job like mine, for example, is when you come off the path, is to learn how to forgive yourself, don't feel shame, and saturate yourself with compassion. Go, oh, I'm off for the moment. Let's just bring it back on. And that helps you get back onto your path to being your best self, right? That's one way of looking at it, okay? Because you experience resistance there. But the second is, if you look at yourself and if you think of like yourself as in a box, and then you put yourself as your best self as a box outside of that. No, actually, let's swap that around. If you have a little box and it's your best self, and then you have an outside box, which is you currently, is any time, well, essentially what you want is both of those boxes to be sitting on top of each other. Every time yourself in a box starts to drift away from your little box, right? You've just created a gap between you as the outside box and your best self as the inside box. And every time there's a little gap there, you are going to come and experience friction and resistance. And that's going to show up anxiety, depression, unsure, lost, unaided, whatever it is. You're just going to feel lost and unsure about shit. For an example, if you have a new job or you start a new career, or you're doing the same thing every single day and you're doing stuff that's not aligned with what your soul is screaming at you to do, you'll start to feel those things, and you'll feel sadness, you'll feel depression, you'll feel anxiety, because that's what I mainly think, especially when it comes to like mental male health, especially, or just everyone in general, is I swear that anxiety and depression comes from is like, if you know the path that you're supposed to be on is you don't feel that. And then a lot of time people numb themselves with alcohol, they'll numb themselves with video games, they'll numb themselves with porn, masturbation, being alone, or partying. You know, they go down all these different avenues which are still not serving them, and they numb themselves, weed, whatever it is. And numbing yourself like that is sort of putting a cover over a wound. Like, let's say if you cut yourself and then you could stop it from healing, that's what numbing yourself with all those different things would be doing. But I believe that your mind and the body is the same. We just have wounds show up differently. Our wounds in our mind show up as anxiety and depression. Wounds in our body show up as pain, like little physical pain. If you cut yourself, it hurts. If you've done an injury in the gym or something, your knee goddamn hurts. And then you have to manage it, and you have to acknowledge that it hurts, because if you don't acknowledge and do something about it, it's going to keep on fucking hurting, right? It's the same thing with your mind. So if your mind is constantly hurting all the time and you're experiencing these things, you're not on your path, and you need to close the gap between your best self and yourself currently. All that means is you've just drifted away from the path a little bit of that person. Very interesting. So why do you experience resistance? And asking yourself that question, like, where's the resistance showing up? And why am I experiencing it? And you start to notice, well, and then if you've mapped out what the best version of yourself be doing, you go, oh, this is what I need to do. Or, oh, I really need to shift this. All right. That leads on to point number 4, what I've got here, is you need to have the courage of a hero. What does that mean? That means the courage of a hero equals being brave enough to be vulnerable. That is the courage of a hero. Because it's very hard to be the best version of yourself, a lot of the time you have to get out of your comfort zone. And obviously you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That is one goal there. But what the opposite of a courage of a hero, brave enough to be vulnerable, looks like is a man deprived of his soul. And that shows up as a symbol of a mannequin without a face. You without a soul, a man deprived of a soul, is a mannequin without a face. So without the hero, without having the courage of being a hero, without being brave enough to get vulnerable with things, you will feel like that. And you'll understand, like, you know, where the fuck did my face go? If we want to chuck in some symbolism and some mystic shit in there. Or a statue without a face. Either or. Because you're deprived of a soul. Why are you deprived of a soul? Because you don't have the balls to basically go out there and be vulnerable. You need to be having the courage to show up as a hero every single day. So what would an example of that look like? Well, that would be if you're disconnected to love, telling someone that you love them. That could be one. Another one for me is every time I get vulnerable is I like to get up on stage and get in my tiny little knickers and flex my body and get as lean as possible. And doing that and getting in front of people like that, for me, is an extreme vulnerability. But I like doing that. As a child, I would always be filming. I did acting, singing, dancing on stage, getting in front of people. So for myself personally, I find that I have the skill of being able to get vulnerable. I know when I need to get vulnerable and say something. It could be asking your boss for a pay rise. It could be, you know, asking someone to marry them. Whatever it could be. It could be a post on social media. But whatever it is being brave enough to be vulnerable will give you heroic courage for sure. And I swear as well, to be the best version of yourself, you know that you need to get vulnerable in all these different situations, especially if you map that person out, and that you'll know as well where you need to be courageous. Tip number 5, understand what your best self would be doing currently. So map out and think about what the best version of yourself would be doing in 5 months. Map out and think about what the best version of yourself would be doing in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I think it's also important to understand all of the different learnings that you've had as a child and be aware of all of the different, you know, traumatic experiences that you had there, but also aware of all the best, positive, most incredible experience you've had as a child and what do they look like and how they've cultivated to you today, right? Now, saying that, once you're clear on what the best version of yourself is doing in the future, start being that person now. So if you start thinking about, as I said beforehand, why and what does that person look like? What are they doing in the future? Is currently, right now, what decisions they make. So when you come up to the little things like when you have to make a decision about something along the lines, well, let's say you just experience a little bit of anxiety and depression. So what would your best version of yourself do in that situation? Like how are they going to think? Whoa. So like, how are they going to think? How are they going to act on all those certain little things? And then just start being that person. Because when you start being that person, the person that you have just, the best version of yourself that you have projected 5 months from now, that you have projected 5 years from now, if you start being that person now and making the decisions and acting how they're acting and doing all those different things, then all you have to do is wait for time to catch up. There's no gap. And you'll start getting and receiving all the things that you've ever wanted in your life. Really important. Number 6 is recognize being attached to the idea of yourself can feel like a burden rather than an immediate blessing, as you may have some unconscious needs to sort out prior. I'll say that again, right? So it's recognize that being attached to the idea of like being your best self. So recognizing, feeling like that you're attached to the best version of yourself, like, oh, I feel so attached, like I'm obsessed, or I really want to be that person, can initially feel like a burden on you and cause you stress, rather than be an immediate blessing, because you have some unconscious needs to sort out prior. Very interesting and an extremely important point to bring up, right? This is a whole bunch of some of Carl Jung's work, right? Some of the thought stuff that they use. Now, if you're attached to being the best version of yourself and it's getting you down, all that it means is that you have some stuff that is unconscious. So the things that we said beforehand, when you got to bring the unconscious conscious and then make it unconscious again, is you have some things unconsciously that you haven't sorted out. For an example, for me, when I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony, I come in there with all these intentions, like, oh, I can't wait to figure this out. Can't wait to like do what the best version of myself is going to be and figure this shit out. And I took the medicine, and halfway through tripping and experiencing, it was kind of like, you don't even get to think about this until you sort out how to deal with your damn anger. I'm like, oh, God damn it. I got so much work to do right now. Jeez. But it was one of the most important things that like I found out. Obviously, when you're taking psychedelics, you have an extremely good connection to the unconscious stuff. For me, another thing a lot of the time is like, what I find that is what's unconscious, what I need is to have a conversation with someone, or to get back to routine and focus on my health first. That's usually what it comes down to. Or get really passionate or understand what I need to be clear on. What do I need to be clear on? What conversations do I need to have with people? And what am I missing out in my health at the moment? Like I remember for a while, I'd missed out on meditation for ages. I'd also missed out on a weekly fast, and I missed out on cardio. And when I started adding those 3 back in, everything started compounding. I was reading better. I was understanding things better. I was putting out, better stuff. I felt a whole lot better. Whatever I wanted to come and manifest in my life started manifesting itself, which is really good. So just a kind of question to you is like, well, what do you don't know currently or you're being ignorant to, which will help you get to the stage for when you think about the best version of yourself, you can actually go out there and start being that person. So it's sort of a little bit of reverse psychology there. So there are my 6 tips, guys. Essentially, one thing that I do wanted to say again is the Friedrich Nietzsche quote again. Man is difficult to discover, most of all to himself. The spirit often tells lies about the soul. So this kind of comes in with this. So if I was thinking about that, man is the most difficult thing to discover. So the best version of yourself in your own self is extremely difficult to discover. Most of all to yourself. Why? Because your ego and your unconscious will try to distract you all the time. It's hard to bring things to the forefront because a lot of the time being your best self means that you have to change, and you got to change a few little things. And changing those little things is fucking hard to do because you got to learn and rewire all these different things in your brain in order to actually go through and struggle for a short period of time and it could be a long period of time, to start showing up consistently every single day, right? This is all making sense. Comes back to this Friedrich Nietzsche quote. The spirit often tells lies about the soul. And because of this resistance that you experience, and because of this change that you need to take in order to be the best version of yourself, your own mind and your own body starts making up a whole bunch of lies about yourself. Unconsciously or consciously, it makes up a whole bunch of excuses for you not to stick to that. Oh, it's too hard. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I have too many friends and family obligations. I have too much stuff on the weekend here. I don't have enough time. I really got to do this. It's like, well, okay, just an example for me, if I have too much socializing going on, then I either need to get better at saying no, or I need to book in a holiday for myself to crush the stuff that, the values and the virtues of the best version of myself will be. For me, for example, I like to go to bed at 8 to 8:30 every single damn night, because I know that if I show up in the morning with the energy that I get from the sleep, I'm going to be so much more clear, I'm going to be so much more focused, and I'm going to be so much more driven to go out and actually get stuff done, because I'm being aligned with my virtues, I'm being aligned with my values. I can give so much more back to my clients. I can give so much more back to you guys, and I can get so much more figuring all of these little things out in order to be clear and concise, in order to make impact on someone else's life, to hopefully touch them, because that's what I value the most, and that's what I want to do. So yeah, I'll repeat that quote again. You can summarize this whole podcast in: man is difficult to discover, most of all to himself, because the spirit often tells lies about the soul. Boom! All right, I'll summarize those 6 points again really quickly. So tips for being your best self, other than that one quote, which summarize everything. Why? Keep asking yourself why to understand what your best self looks like and recognize that it's going to be fucking hard. Number 2, make your unconscious conscious and then unconscious again. Habits, routine, figuring all that shit out. Number 3, why do you experience resistance? So every time that you're disconnected, resistance is going to come up. Where is that friction coming from? Number 4, have the courage to be a hero, because having the courage to be a hero equals brave enough to be vulnerable. Be brave enough to be vulnerable, and you will have the courage of a hero. The opposite of that is a man deprived of a soul, which equals a mannequin. Just a shellless, faceless statue or mannequin. Understand what your best self would be doing currently, and then just know time will just catch up. Number 6, recognize being attached to the idea of yourself can feel like a burden rather than an immediate blessing, as you may have some unconscious needs to sort out prior to being your best self. Boom! All right, guys, that's it for this one. A little shout out, remember, to you guys, that I've got some coaching space, which is great. If you want to learn about all this stuff, map this out, learn the difference between primal hacking, biohacking, use all my programs, resources, go out there and crush stuff and crush life so much more than you would originally think possible, I'm here to help you out. We've got that hierarchy. You can listen to it in episode 2. That's essentially what I coach you through. You can go through step by step in order to crush that. And that is the theory that we run by. I'm running by it, and I'm experiencing fucking awesome success myself personally, internally, and externally. And I hope that you will too. We'll go out there, crush, do some things together, work together one-on-ones, very intimate. We basically become best friends. It's good. All right, guys. Big love to you. I hope you got something out of this podcast. And if you did, please share it with someone. Send it to someone. Share it on your story. God damn, I would appreciate that so much more than you know. Please, please, please do that. Big love, and see you in the next one.